Hello to the global audience. Welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. It's matinee time here in Chicago, but it's in the early evening hours of England, and I'm so happy to welcome Charlie Adlard to Word Balloon. As I was telling you before we went on the air, Charlie, this is a real thrill for me. I've been meaning to do this for a really long time. Welcome.
Oh, well, I'm honored. Thank you, John.
You know, I'm a huge fan, and we're going to get into a lot of things. You've got a Webtoons comic that debuted this week. I've already put it in the chat, everybody. So if you look at the various platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Periscope via Twitter, it should be there, and you can read Charlie's work on this brand new book, and I've got it written down here. Planet Divock 91. Am I saying that properly?
Yep. I don't think there's another way of pronouncing it. It's a fairly obvious reversal of a certain pandemic we've been having. It's not subtle.
Great idea. And Sarah Kenny is the writer?
That's right. Yeah, she was the person who implemented the whole thing, to be honest. Yeah. I'm just a small cog in a much bigger wheel of this. Yeah.
You drew the first chapter, and I'm gonna scroll through some of your art in a second. But essentially, you'll probably describe it better than me, Charlie, in terms of the basics of the story. If I could trouble you to give us the 10-cent pitch.
Well, it comes from a fairly sort of complex sort of origin, really, which is obviously it's a book dealing with our current situation. It's a charity thing, first and foremost. You know, we've all donated our services for the book. But it was Sarah's idea. I think we've all fallen behind her because obviously, we're all sat at home, especially us in this business, any creatives, to be honest, sort of sat in this business. With our governments, some certain governments anyway, telling us what a great job we're doing by just sitting at home doing nothing. And I'm the sort of person that just thinks, I'd love to help a bit more than just sitting at home, even though people are telling you you're doing a great job, blah, 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 blah. So, and I knew Sarah from a convention called Thought Bubble that happens every year in Leeds.
Yes.
Which is a brilliant show. And met Sarah. So they actually did a Walking Dead experience last year.
Oh.
I was involved a bit with the putting together of that show, obviously, with artwork and everything. And she just emailed me out of the blue. Just literally as I was sort of sitting there thinking, what else? I wish I could do something else, and I'm not the best person at starting off something. I'm very good at contributing once something's started. But so as soon as she came up with the concept, and she works a lot with education, educational organizations, things like that. So we got sort of young adults involved with the not necessarily the concept, but just to generate ideas for this book. This is all Sarah's stuff. I wasn't sort of sat there on the same teams doing this.
Okay.
And Divock 91 was born out of this, so it's a kind of a generated with young people's ideas. Obviously, the adults have come up with the main concept from this inspiration, and it's a kind of thing about telling a story of these two kids that have been put on a planet where they're sort of almost like refugees, with obviously a selected other bunch of refugees from Earth. So it is an allegorical story of the pandemic, but it'll go beyond that. It's not an obvious kind of retelling. From what I've read so far, and obviously I haven't seen the whole thing. I've only really seen my bit.
Okay.
It goes beyond that. It will tell a proper young adult story. That's for sure.
It's, as I understand it, they're taken away from Earth because of a pandemic, to repopulate an alien world to save the human race, essentially. Some flavors of the American television show The 100 that does the last few years. Similarity.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, very similar. Yeah, very similar. And Yeah, it is just. I mean, I was, I'll be honest. I mean, I was just wanting to help, to begin with, so they could have presented me with something a lot less, and I'd have still done it. The irony was, 1 minute I'm sat there going, I really need to help. Literally 3 projects came in at the same time. Charitable things where you could help. One is obviously Divock 91, which we're talking about. One is a fairly obvious one, which I'm sure we will be talking about shortly.
Absolutely.
And there's a contribution to a friend of mine, Fraser Brown's book called Tales from the Quarantine, which is also another charity set up more dealing, sort of generating money more for. He's Fraser Brown, the guy behind it, he's a theatre guy predominantly. So his main concern was helping theatre. He's also obviously a massive comics fan. But it will go beyond the theatre or the sort of probably generate, funding, for creatives who've been obviously badly hit, as we all have been by, the last few months.
Well, I'm going to show some images of your work from Planet Divock. I'm not used to seeing your work, Charlie, in color. So I'm gonna add this to the screen right now, and I will start scrolling to get to your. Here's the explanation. Young people with their dynamism, their energy, and their inherent understanding of our interconnected world have much to teach us. Increased educational attainment, advances in technology, and the spread of information have made this generation the best educated and most connected, and most informed in history. That's a great quote from Kofi. But here's your art.
Yeah.
God, I mean, honestly, Charlie, I've always loved your work, and I'm going to talk about pre-Walking Dead stuff that I've enjoyed of your work as well. And a lot of it is in black and white, so it's so great to see color.
Well, it wasn't colored by me. It was there we go. Definitely. There just wasn't the time to color it, because the thing about this was, because it obviously had to be of the now, there wasn't the time to take my time over it. This thing had to, like the other 2 projects, they were all sort of, well, we've got to get it out while this is still, while the pandemic is obviously still happening and it's still news. So, I think, my contribution to it, believe it or not, I think it was 18 pages. I did pretty much in a week. So,
wow. Man.
It was fast work, but it was, they're not, proper comics pages, I suppose, for want of a better word. This is geared towards, I'm sure you were going to ask me, is geared towards webtoons. So it is a different approach, absolutely. And a faster approach.
I've included the link in the chats on, again, the platform, so everyone can go to Webtoons. Charlie's chapter is already up. It went up on the 15th, and as Wayne said, again, as I said as well, it's cool to see your stuff in color. I'm curious about the Webtoons format being vertical. Excuse me, added a G. What was it like? Does that affect the way you storytell visually, knowing that it's going to be, vertical like that?
Absolutely. I mean, I got to admit, in my ignorance, when Sarah said it's going to be for webtoons, my initial question was, what's webtoons?
Sure.
So, I am not the target audience for webtoons. It is very much, a thing for, younger people, I suppose. I mean, you're a comics fan, so you could easily go on and look at it, but it is another format of telling comic stories, definitely. I mean, I would argue it's not actually comics. That's not as a criticism, but it does stuff that's different to comics. So you could say, is this comics, or is this another just way of narrative storytelling? I'd say it's more narrative storytelling than comics.
Okay.
So the other challenge, as opposed to doing it really fast, was also getting used to reformatting it as well. Initially, my suggestions were, I'll literally do separate panels, because you read it vertically, like you said. It's designed for your phone mainly. It's
Yes.
not designed for iPads. It's not designed for computers. It's designed for your phone. So you're there flicking, scrolling up as as you're reading it. So it's a great format for just sort of casually, whether you're waiting for a train or something, or
Sure.
you can read it. So that's what it's good for. And its audience, its reach is enormous. So it's quite, when I started to look into it, I was really impressed by its, sort of,
Scope.
people would read
Yes.
the thing. So initially I suggested that. I said, shall I do it as just separate panels? Then you can format it however you want, or panels to literally fit the screen of the phone. And then I did a bit more research. I looked at, obviously other webtoons and saw that, people were playing with the format and everything. And then Sarah came back and said, well, look, it would be easier if you just did it as a proper comics page. And because we might print it one day. So it's like,
Sure.
That makes sense because it would look better. So if you needed to do this sort of compromise between, making it formatted right for webtoons and then make it work for do it as a page for comics, because I think it would look awful if you were just taking separate panels from webtoons, just sort of cutting and pasting and trying to create a page out of that. So, so I sort of arrived at always trying to make the main part of the story in terms of every panel be centralized within the panel, so they can cut it down and make it fit. So even though there's widescreen panels, landscape panels and everything, the main source of action is taking place, whether it's central or to the side. The main stuff of it is kind of centered around one area, generally a squarish area, so it will fit, a phone. So, there's more planning in doing something like this than I would normally do. Normally I'd just sit down and instantly start. That's kind of generally my way of doing comics, but this was a lot more thinking and a lot more sort of trying to work out. And again, because it's meant to be read on a phone, you can't go into too much detail, which worked for speed for me anyway, because if you're going to do a background, it's going to get lost completely. So your backgrounds have to be fairly simple, otherwise you're just shrinking down this big complicated picture to that size. It's
Absolutely. When digital comics first started before the iPad, and you were only reading them on phones, that was my first thought as well. And I mean, again, in the American format, almost like, a screen that's the size of a trading card, a baseball, a sports card or something. Yeah. And that was my concern about digital comics. Ed asks a good question. And I mean, you're kind of covering it, but with phone size format in mind, are there perspective or scale or camera placement choices that would be different in a traditional comic book format?
Well, not necessarily in a traditional comic book format. I mean, I'm still drawing comics. I'm still drawing comic panels at the end of the day. But like I've just said, you've got to be mindful to the formatting. It's as simple as that. Which it is quite interesting because it brought to mind certain things that comics do, which are very unique to comic books. The ability. There is no other art form out there. And I should have had this one in my big portfolio of stuff to say when I was comics laureate, but I didn't, unfortunately. But one of the thing that really struck me, and it's a fairly obvious thing when you think about it, but the thing that comics do uniquely, and there is no other art form, especially something you actually read or look at that does it, is the ability to show the whole page. Novels don't do that, whatever. But and you can't do that on webtoons either because you're reading individual panels. So the magic of comics is you get a sense of the story even before you've read the story, because you can see you've got this thing laid out in front of you, So it's a very interesting way of playing with how you play with that format in terms of comics versus how you play with the format, in iTunes, which is literally just every panel is a surprise because you're flicking up, and I mean, obviously you can treat it almost like a comic in terms you can flick right to the end first to see the last panel if you want to.
Sure.
But I presume most people are literally just reading it chronologically. Yeah,
I'm with you.
But yeah, like I said, there are, which, as I keep saying, it makes it really interesting to see, whether that is actually comics or not, webtoons, or it's a different format.
Interesting. No, I understand, man. And again, for people who are curious, beyond the link specifically to Charlie's chapter of this story, there are so many great creators that are there doing other stories, and it's all free, which is just amazing that it is free. And I know it started as a South Korean product because they are very phone intensive in terms of getting content on their phones. And I'm fascinated by the creators that have jumped on and experimented and, are given this chance to tell different stories. Katie Cook, one of my dear friends, was just on a couple of weeks ago talking about it. And Dean Haspiel will be on next week talking about his stuff.
Actually on it. Yeah. It was interesting because I was sort of doing research and I was thinking, is there anybody I know of in this, because obviously a lot of it is still, like say, South Korean. It's still, a lot of it is manga. Yes. And that is my sort of weak spot. Manga is just my sort of bit that it's not that I don't appreciate it, but it's just not something that I've ever really delved into beyond the really obvious stuff like Akira or whatever. Sure. And so I kind of, Webtoons is not the place for me to start delving into the world of manga either. So there's a lot of stuff I was looking through, going, more manga, and then then there's the sort of the art guys I've heard of, or the odd Western artist, and you think, oh right, it's not unique to a certain part of the world. Everyone can contribute.
Absolutely. It's fascinating. And obviously Walking Dead questions are starting to pile in, and I promise you we'll get to it. But there were a couple things. First of all, my first exposure to you was a lot of this early 2000s stuff you did, like with Larry Young, Astronauts in Trouble.
Yes.
Loved that. Oh, man, I'm a sucker for any NASA or astronaut kind of based stuff, so I love that series.
I really enjoyed doing the astronaut stuff. Yeah, it was great working with Larry. Yes, I mean, we've stayed vaguely in touch over the years. I mean, I did a couple of years back, probably more now. Image did re-release all the titles as a sort of a 13-issue series, and I redid 13 covers for it. In fact, actually, it was my first digital work I seem to remember doing. Wow. Those covers. So I was using it as a bit of an experiment, which kind of worked, But unfortunately, no one read them. But hey, what are you going to do?
I read them. I love that. And also, your work with Joe Casey, Code Flesh in particular, really loved Code Flesh, man. And I always tell Joe that when I talk to him. I had him on a couple of months ago.
Right.
And Rock Bottom as well.
Rock Bottom, I think, to be honest, I think that's out of the stuff I've read of Joe's. Obviously, I've not read everything Joe's written. I think that's the best thing he's ever written.
Wow.
So I was really proud, pleased to be involved, in that one. And again, it's slightly frustrating that, it's not something that's ever really sort of hit with the general public, whether that's a publisher that's not promoted it correctly, I don't know, but, it's been reprinted, obviously Larry, AIT Planet La published it first, then Image had a crack at it and still, it didn't hit. I mean, it was quite experimental for me because I was doing it, open line art. I took out all my blacks, so it was a bit of my stuff looked more like Jeff Darrow or something like that. And it was a bit of an experiment to me, to take me out of my comfort zone, etc., etc. But I thought the story by Joe was just absolutely phenomenal. It had real heart and it had a real emotional impact, right right at the end. Probably I've just seen that comment.
Yeah, somebody was saying that Charlie's art style would make a great manga.
I'm fast. That's probably my only connection with manga.
When I told you I was speaking to Richard Starking earlier, and he wanted to know two things. One, about had you ever gone a lot to the Westminster comic kind of flea market sort of thing, and the pub across the street at the Westminster Arms? Any good memories from that experience?
No, I never did that. Just
No?
because I'm about a 2.5 hour drive from London. I live in a place called Shrewsbury in Shropshire, which is very, very rural. Well, the town's quite large, but it's a very rural county. But I used to, for the first year or so of my professional career, I would literally drive my artwork or go on the train or whatever, drive it down to London. I'd never post it, and obviously this is before the days of scanning in artwork or
Sure.
early 90s. So every other week I'd be down in London, but that was going to the offices of Fleetway, the publishers of 2000 AD and the Judge Dredd magazine. So they were based a bit further, well, not around the Westminster area, but we'd always go to the pub.
Well, sure.
Of course. And I did get some really good friends down there at the time, so I'd always go down and stay with them for a night or a couple of nights or whatever, and have a bit of a laugh.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Richard says your style to him is like as if you were the love child of Dave Gibbons and Steve Dillon. That's how he described your art.
Really?
I like the reaction.
All right. Well, no, it's I know Dave really well, but
I love Dave. The
but
best guy.
I've never thought about. I can see. I don't know. It's weird what people see in your work.
Everything's subjective. Absolutely, man.
Yeah. I've never personally been influenced by either of those guys. That's kind of interesting. They, great artists they are. That's not saying that. That's no diss to them. But you are influenced by certain artists, and certain artists you just aren't. And Dave and Steve are not on my list. So that's kind of weird to be described that way.
Well, as we transition to Walking Dead talk, I'll put a couple of comments up. Jay says, "Oh my God, Charlie Live! I miss your work, man. By the way, I'm the guy who asked you once on Twitter who the biggest Pentel is, and I like your band, The Grind. It's my favorite song. Greetings from Austria." Oh, that's very sweet.
Right, that's very kind. Yeah, well, if he knows, we've got a new album out. This is my band, obviously.
Yeah. Tell us.
Yeah. It's actually got a name, this album. It's called Hard to Destroy. And it's taken a long time to get this album produced. We've gone through a few lineup changes, etc. But we were going to release it around about February, March time, but a little thing happened, and I mean, it's online. You can get it on Bandcamp, and it's on Spotify, etc.
Fantastic.
But we've been busily writing in the lockdown. Finally, we've got around to kind of doing home recording. As a lot of bands have been doing, they're doing their bit and then sending it to the next person and sending it to the next person. And I've got, one of my drum kits is an electronic drums, so I can record that on GarageBand and then send that to the next guy. So actually, we've been really, really productive in the lockdown, probably more productive than we would if we were just sort of getting together once a week and rehearsing. So we're all fully functional.
So what's the name of your band? The Grind, I assume, is the song.
The Grind is one of the songs off the first album. Yeah, I mean, I'm calling them albums. They are albums, but it's not like we're in the charts or anything, obviously. They are total vanity projects. But we're called Cosmic Rays.
Cosmic Rays, fantastic.
Yeah, and originally we were formed as a comic artists band. We were originally formed to do covers at a convention in Birmingham, and the original lineup in the band was Phil Winslade on guitar, and
Sure.
Liam Sharp was our vocalist.
Oh my God, I'm going to talk to Liam next week. That's fantastic. I'm going to ask him about this. Outstanding.
You can talk about the original. Well, we were called Mind Power. Well, originally we were called a giant size band thing for the show, and we carried it well. And then we thought we'd change the name. We changed the name to Mind Power Cosmic. But we realised it's a bit too comic-y, in-jokey for the general public, because Phil and I especially wanted to take it beyond a covers band. So we just thought, yeah, we need to sort of make it a bit more, I don't know, so the general public could understand the name rather than Mind Power Cosmic. Yeah, it was a bit too niche. So that's why we changed it to Cosmic Rays. And then Liam moved to, obviously, San Francisco, where he lives now. Phil and I carried on with a couple of other members that we recruited, non-comics people this time. And then Phil eventually decided that was enough. So really, I'm the only comicsy guy. Ironically, our singer was the guy who ran the Birmingham Comic Show. So,
oh, wow.
So he's now joined. He joined the band ages ago, as when Liam left. So it's kind of weird that Shane, the organizer, has now become our vocalist. So yeah, he is another comics person, but obviously not within the industry, as in a writer or artist. But yeah, so we're trying to escape the comics. That sounds awful. We're trying to escape the comics market, because we realized, we played a couple of cons and no one was interested.
Sure.
So we thought, well, actually, we don't have to sell ourselves on being, comics related. Let's just do it as a proper musical project. So yeah, we're just releasing albums, but it's more for us. It's just more of, if we're writing songs, let's record them.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Mark DeMatteis, releases music as well. So no, that's always great to hear. So Ken has an interesting question. Obviously, you're a top tier creator with an incredible work ethic. You did 18 issues a year for 10 years on Walking Dead. Every publisher should be beating down your door right now with offers. True?
I don't know. No. Well, okay. No, I'm busy. I'm always busy. You see, I don't know how much people, when people read interviews with me, I've been very vocal, especially since The Walking Dead became successful. I've been very vocal about, create your own comics, for instance. And every time somebody asks me, what would you really, what character would you like to draw? My stock answer, and it's true, is, well, a character I'd like to create myself. I'm not really interested anymore in, drawing somebody else's character. And the other reason, it's no big secret, The Walking Dead financially has done pretty well for me and Robert. So I don't need to work for Marvel and DC. And I've kind of been a bit vocal about that, because I've been saying I want to create, I don't want to do, somebody else's characters. It's not saying I'll never do it, but I'll certainly never do it as a big mini-series or ongoing series. I'd be quite happy to do a contribute to something, or do variant covers, or whatever, things like that. That's all good fun. That's kind of minimal commitment, shall we say.
Understood.
But to commit a lot of time on something that's not mine now. I mean, I totally realise I'm speaking from an enormous position of privilege saying this, and I know the majority of comics creators out there, obviously need a page rate, and I was obviously in that position for many, many years, and
of course
I understand that. But thankfully, I'm not in that position, so I have the luxury of being able to say I want to do what I want to do, as opposed to what somebody else wants me to do. So whether Marvel and DC, let's face it, those are the ones we're talking about, haven't been beating down my door. It might be part of the reason, and I certainly haven't put myself out there. I've not rung anybody And that's the thing. I've been working on the Walking Dead. Yeah, literally 16 years.
Yeah.
16 years. That's a lot of editors, in those companies have gone through the doors. I used to know them all 16 years ago, but why would I be talking to them? In those 16 years, I've been busy for those 16 years. So,
Indeed.
To be honest, I probably know 2 or 3 editors, if that, in each company.
Yes.
And that's it, and they're the ones that have stayed on for a long time.
Certainly.
So, I don't know. Or perhaps they just think I'm crap.
Well, I certainly don't think that's the case. But
I don't know. But I'm busy. I mean, I'm working at the minute. I'm just preoccupying myself with a project with my old writer pal, Robbie Morrison.
Fantastic.
Who we did White Death with, which is still probably one of my proudest books in terms of how we got it together. And, it was my first creator-owned book, etc., etc. And the work process with it and the experimentation, etc., etc. So we're working on a 16th century set murder mystery story set in Antwerp around the time of the sort of Spanish Inquisition and the witch hunts.
Wow, cool.
Featuring a real historical character called Nicholas Agrippa, who was a knight, philosopher, scientist, everything, but really, for his time, really progressive. So we've sort of fashioned a fictional story. It's like Sherlock Holmes meets The Name of the Rose, if you want to use a Hollywood kind of,
That's great.
A Hollywood sort of pitch for it.
I was a big fan of Derek Jacobi's Is it Cadfael?
Oh, Brother Cadfael. Well, of course, that is a local Shrewsbury set thing. So it's kind of interesting.
That's awesome.
I come from that same part of the world that Cadfael stories are set in. So
that's terrific, man.
That sort of thing, where it's moody, really slightly supernatural, but is it supernatural? That sort of thing. A lot of atmosphere, a lot of research.
That's good though.
Yeah, it's all. I am occasionally posting panels from it because we haven't even. Well, I'm fully confident we'll get a publisher for it, but we haven't actually taken it out there and made a deal yet. To be honest, there are publishers we're talking to, and it will be. It won't be obviously. The big 2, obviously. But again, it's one of those. It's fairly niche in terms of it's not your obvious superhero story, shall we say? But no. I'm pretty much pouring my heart and soul into this. It's a 120-page book, and I'm about just over halfway through. And
would you release it as a graphic novel? Then is that the plan?
95% sure we'll release it as a one-off. Book.
Okay.
It deserves it. There's not. It just doesn't feel like we're doing a floppy.
I'm with you.
You know what I mean?
No, and in fact, I think the price point.
No disrespect to floppies. But it just feels like a prop. It just feels like a one-off solid story. But I mean, hopefully by the end of the year, I should have finished with it. It's. A lot of other things seem to be getting in the way, but we haven't, we're working on it ourselves, so there's no big deadline for it, so we shall see.
when you finish the run on Walking Dead, how did you take a long break? Did you need to relax? I mean, tell me.
No, I didn't. I certainly didn't stop drawing. I didn't sort of stop drawing for like a month or anything like that.
Okay.
You probably talk to most comics people, whether they're writers or artists. I mean, we all do it. We're all in this game because we love what we do.
Sure.
So every day for me is play. So why would
That's great.
Why would I want to stop having fun?
That's excellent to hear, man. Yeah. No, and that's when the thing you love becomes your work, and I can even attest to that as a broadcaster. And even as a podcaster, I mean, I'm having the time of my life when I do these conversations. So it never feels like work. I can
No,
appreciate that.
and I've never felt. I mean, the only downside to even the intense, 16 years I had on The Walking Dead, for me, never felt. Yeah, people say, "How the hell did you do that?" And I was like, I don't know. It just seemed to do an issue and then go on to the next issue, and then But I was literally fast enough that even that didn't faze me in terms of pressure. Because I did other projects in between and still put out 12 plus issues a year, so it's never been a problem or that. So when The Walking Dead finished, I mean, yes, I did scale back for sure. I had a thing called Vampire State Building, which was a French book to finish, but again, that the French are brilliant because working for France, their deadlines are so long away. It doesn't feel like you have one. So
Okay.
even though it was a book I was literally working on for years, from the onset of it was 2 volumes, and from the onset of that, it was years ago. So I had that to finish. So I finished that kind of casually. And then Robbie and I were already talking about Heretic, which is I forgot to mention what it was called, the book we're working on. And we just sort of seeded into that pretty much straight after I'd finished Vampire State, probably a month, 2 months after I'd finished Walking Dead. So it's been kind of consistent. But there's been lots of other stuff that's kind of, we're building a house as well, so that's kind of
Hey, that's great. Congratulations. That's wonderful.
I don't know if congratulations is the right word.
Well, my condolences then, if it's more of a headache than a joy right now. Let's take both sides of The Walking Dead, if you would, please, because I've never heard the origin. It's been years since I've talked to Robert. But that moment, because I know Tony Moore obviously started with the first 6 issues. And then, so tell me about when, you and Kirkman got together and how you were approached to come on board.
Well, I'd sort of, funny enough, talking about, when we were talking about Joe Casey, it was Joe that introduced me to Robert initially, and I just happened to be, I used to go to San Diego every year, through the late 90s into the, 2000s, it was my sort of schmoozing, trip, shall we say, my tax-deductible schmoozing trip. I regarded it as work because I was, just spent, most of the time on the floor trying to get to talk to as many people and you're
networking, absolutely.
And so I was chatting to Joe one San Diego, probably must have been very early 2000s, and he introduced me to Robert, who obviously at the time was just as doing small independent publishing with Funkatron and doing Battle Pope and stuff.
Yes.
I probably exchanged 5 minutes worth of conversation at that time between me and Joe and Robert. And I think I met him again the next year and again exchanged a very minimum sort of amount of conversation. So I never thought, this is a guy that's, going to be my, savior, shall we say, in the industry. But I knew him. And then I just had an email out of the blue just saying, are you interested in taking over from Tony on this? Have you heard of this book I'm doing called The Walking Dead? And to be honest, as I'm sure you know, at the time, Image Comics we're going through that weird transitory period between, the initial mega years of just manic superhero create your own stuff.
Yes.
Transferring over to what they are now. They're going through that period of just being that kind of not very important little indie publisher.
Yes.
And I got to admit, I was like, really? I don't know. But it caught me in between jobs. And I was about to embark on something, I think, for IDW. Just an adaptation of something, and it wasn't really something I wanted to do. But hey, when you're a freelance, you're taking what will pay.
Certainly.
So it seemed a better option. It sounds really disingenuous now to sort of talk about it in those terms, but that's yeah. At the beginning, that's what it was. I mean, obviously, I got sent, and then you sent me the first 6 issues. You sent me the script to issue 7, and I liked it. Yeah, I did. I didn't think it was groundbreaking. I didn't think, oh my god, this is going to be massive. But I liked it. I thought, oh, this is interesting. Well, I didn't even think this is an interesting take. But what I did like was it was concentrating on character more than zombies. Because I think issue 7 hardly had any zombies in. You know, I think it had one zombie sort of episode, and that was it. So most of it was, and it was the introduction of Tyrese and his, family, and so I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting because at least I do what I enjoy, which is, character stuff, to be honest, more than the action. And of course, then we carry on and carry on and carry on.
Yeah.
And, there wasn't a moment where I suddenly thought, oh my God, this is going to be this huge thing. Or even a moment where I thought, oh my God, Robert is this genius onto this amazing concept. It was just something that I just constantly enjoyed drawing until it became this phenomena. Then the sort of I don't know, the scales fell from my eyes, and I realised, what exactly we had achieved and everything, over the years. So, but there was never one moment where I kind of thought, oh my God, this is it. It was just this series of very small steps up, to to where it got to, shall we say?
Indeed. It was just so amazing to see the. I'm sorry, I'm hearing an echo. I don't know if that's.
Oh no, well, it's all right for me. I don't know.
Okay.
Yep.
Hopefully it'll go. There we go. It's gone away now. No, as you say, I mean, my God, the fact that it just, every trade would obviously more people would jump on. Certainly the television show. I mean, it's literally probably the only comic property adapted that got people reading the comic book. I can't think of another as successful as the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been and DC's television has been. You guys really, that was just incredible.
Well, I think it is that sort of bottling lightning, isn't it? Where you've got to have a successful, whether it's film, TV show, whatever, and you've also got to have an equally quite successful book at the same time, so it's already out there, to get that perfect moment where both are doing just phenomenally within their markets. You do stand a better chance. I'm sure something like Hellboy or Ghost World or something like that probably did, especially the first Hellboy movie, would have done good for the books because no one's heard of those properties. That's the difference. I think, the difference is with the Marvel and DC stuff, especially initially anyway, is everyone knows about Superman, everyone knows about Batman, everyone knows about Spider-Man. So it doesn't translate so much to sales because people that read Batman anyway. And I don't think going to see a Batman movie is going to make some people suddenly go, I think, there's a comic. They know there's a comic, and they'd have already gone out and tried it if they were interested. So I think that's the difference with The Walking Dead was the fact that people would find out, and because it's a TV show as well, it's actually we've got a better chance than even a movie because it is actually seen by more people worldwide. And when we've got a viewership of the TV show in the tens of millions worldwide, a fraction of those people, if they go out and buy the comic book, that's a hell of a that's a hell of a sales, and that's what happened. Probably only I don't know what percentage it would be, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's like between 1% and 5% of people would have probably sort of thought about reading or even buying, The Walking Dead. But that's all you need, in something that successful. And and we were off.
No, it's amazing. All right, and I'm going to get to questions, I promise, in a second. but regarding the Negan book, great idea in terms of making it a print-only product at a time when the stores really needed it. So, yeah, can you tell us the process of that story happening? Was it already planned, and then because of the pandemic, or how quickly did it all come together to make this book?
Believe you me, it was not planned.
Wow.
I again, I don't know how vocal Robert was as well as I, but I was extremely vocal about saying, The Walking Dead is finished. That is, no more. There's nothing else. Nothing else, And again, credit to Robert. He's the one that came up with the idea, but obviously he was sat at home probably thinking exactly the same thing that I was thinking, about, being fairly useless. But obviously his concern was a bit, mine was a bit broader. His was a bit more focused, in terms of just, sort of helping our industry, which is a great idea, because sometimes you need to be focused rather than being a bit more sort of, I suppose, random with your I'll help everyone. Oh, I'll do, And so he just, again, got in touch and said, I've been thinking about this. What do you reckon? And as I said, it made me sort of think, well, that really goes to help, and that'll be a serious, a serious targeted, assist to businesses, etc., etc. And I, like everybody else, wants our business to our industry to survive.
Certainly.
So yeah, it was a no-brainer, as simple as that. But literally similar to Divock 91, it was talked about and got together and finished, or especially from my point of view, in less than a month.
Insane. That's amazing.
It was kind of quite refreshing, because since I finished The Walking Dead April last year, which is when I put my final bit of ink on that last picture of Rick on the rocking chair.
Yeah.
I haven't worked fast. Yeah, I've been working at a much slower pace because I've got the time. It was kind of refreshing to go back to this really intense, fast-paced, but just for a bit. I didn't want to return to it forever, but it was just nice to do that sort of. I think it was took me about 3 weeks to do the whole thing, and it was incredibly fast. It was literally because I was penciling and inking, and yeah. Thank God it was just a couple of characters. I'm glad Robert wasn't in an army or anything like that for many or massive street scenes or anything like that.
So you're kind of teasing us with and really, this is also a Robert question, but you guys are kind of teasing us with the ending there. And don't you want to see what happens next? And that was just beautiful, man.
I did comment back and said, "Don't do that."
Fans were saying that, don't do that, or who was saying don't do that?
Well, I was saying don't do that.
You were saying don't do that.
Well, yeah, I was saying don't do that. Because I like to be a man of my word. And he's stealing it all, by going, it's for charity. I was like, I can't say no now. If you'd have come to me and go, I want to make a load of money on this, I'd have gone, no. I've said no. No means no. But because he used the bloody C word.
That's awesome, man. No, that's good. Seriously, thank God, because it's a lovely coda to the series, and that's fine. I mean, and as again, who's to say 10 years from now, whatever, who's to say? But again, not to for you to go back on your word, and I'm not expecting any reaction. This is as one of the audience saying, fantastic tease, great story, lovely book, and whatever. So that's great. Honestly.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, it was. I was very pleased with how it actually turned out, especially the pace it was, conceived, and everyone, sort of went in with a list game, which was, brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
All right, now I'm going to go to some questions, and Ed has a good question here. What was the collaboration like, or style choices made to work with Cliff's Graysdale on the series.
Oh, right. To be honest, from my point of view, I was always drawing. I'd always draw a page to satisfy myself. So I'm only really saying this from the point of view of when I was penciling and inking the book, because that is my, shall we say, that's my natural state. When I was just penciling it for all those years, up until almost the end, as great an inker as Stefano was, and I love what he was doing, it was never, my preferred choice was to have me inking it. And, you'll never see me penciling another book again in my life, because I'm a guy that likes to do both. So, but from when I was, inking it myself, I would get it to a point that I'd be satisfied with it as a piece of black and white artwork. So whatever Cliff added afterwards was pretty much, to my mind, just a sort of a bit of decoration. Now, that sounds really horrible, because he did more than that. But I collaboratively, it wasn't really, it was, I did my job, he did his job,
Okay. Yeah.
And, I think you could probably print, my inked Walking Dead pages without Cliff's grayscale, and it wouldn't feel empty. Grayscale was just a nice little touch on top, which would just make it ping a bit more, I think. And to be honest, the actual reason we went grayscale, when Robert's decision to go grayscale right at the beginning of the book with Tony, was an actual commercial decision, because if you do it grayscale, it looks a bit less black and white. That sounds ridiculous to say, but I think to an untrained eye, if it's pure black and white, it might not be commercially viable to do. But if you add that grayscale, it doesn't cost you any more to do it as a book. You've got that tiny bit on top, which kind of looks like color but isn't.
Understood. Absolutely. Yeah. Good depth.
So it was a cost thing, and it was also a little incentive to people that read the book go, look, we're not really black and white. So, and
I can appreciate that. No, I know. I love black and white comics and grayscale, but I can appreciate that it can be a hard sell. And as I said, back when you were doing Rock Bottom and Code Flesh and everything, so and Astronauts in Trouble. So no,
a lot of black and white. Yeah, I mean it's well, it goes to show how how still unsellable black and white is, because it wasn't like we inspired a bunch of black and white comics that are now currently all sitting at certain positions on the top 100 comics. Now we've gone. There are no black and white comics in the top 100 or whatever, and it's a real shame. I think it's a real shame that everything has to be, color. It's like animation. Everything has to be CGI now. Why can't we have two-dimensional and drawn? It's a different. It's not. The general public perceive it as a lower art form now, or as a lesser thing. And it's like, no, it's not. It's just
of course not.
Another art form, another way of telling a story. That's so. I am the only thing I suppose has always left a slightly bad taste in my mouth post Walking Dead is the fact that we didn't create a movement where loads of comics are now non-superhero comics that are successful. Yes, we did create the Image, sort of phenomena, if you want to call it that. And yes, there have been books, sort of that are non-superhero, but it's still a rarity, I think, especially high-selling ones. There's a lot of mid-tier ones that are doing well, but it doesn't crack that big. It doesn't crack the big numbers as much, and it's a real shame, both being non-superhero and black and white. we were so onto a non-commercial, book. It just makes its success even more mind-boggling sometimes.
I got to tell you, Charlie, truly, the handful of comic book ideas that I have in my head, if I were an artist, I'd make them happen. And you can't ask a quality artist to waste their time with Jimmy Idiot here, but they'd all be black and white. I truly, I'm a massive black and white film fan. And
Right.
I guess again, if you find the right artist, I wouldn't be opposed to grayscale. But I do love all that stuff, and I agree with what you're saying about that. Midline books are succeeding. It's in small steps, and truly, the great thing is, in the 15 years that I've been doing Word Balloon, it's been great to see that there are more non-superhero books succeeding and being profitable to continue. And then you got things like Greg Rucka's Stumptown being made into a television series, and other non-superhero things that are becoming films. The Old Guard on Netflix now, another Greg project and stuff. So small steps, man.
Yeah, it is. I think what's an interesting difference over the years that I've been in the industry is in the first, let's call it pre-Walking Dead years, a writer or an artist sort of work, sort of career arc would be to start off in independent books, start off with the creator owned stuff, build up to the big Marvel or DC stuff, and almost end their career writing or drawing Batman or something like that. I think now it's reversed.
Yes, sir.
Build themselves up through the big two, get to a certain point where they're able to do their creator-owned book and actually finish their careers, or hopefully transverse over to doing creator-owned stuff, or predominantly creator-owned stuff. There's certainly a lot more artists and writers out there who, like me, are vocal about doing that and are predominantly concentrating on that side of it, rather than that has definitely changed. That it is perceived now that doing your own stuff is you can have success doing it, and there's a possibility of making a living out of it, rather than 20 years ago, if you're doing your own stuff, it was like, what are you doing? You're going to sell 200 of these stapled together things, and
right. Charlie, I swear this has been a recurring conversation, especially in the last 10 years of doing the podcast, and making the same observation that the big two are almost like university, and then you go on and can do your own thing and take that audience with you. And I'm thrilled that has happened, and truly a lot of that has to do with yours and Robert's success with the series. So I completely agree. Now we're coming up on an hour. Can I finish the questions that people had? I don't. Okay, man. Cool.
10 more minutes. That's no worries.
God bless you. It's all good, man. All right. So Ken has an interesting question. Clearly, you're a. Oh no, that was one we already did. Here's another question from Ken. How do you feel about the idea that The Walking Dead may have contributed to the jingoistic nightmare that is currently the American political hellscape? And he says the idea of the soulless other across the fence, that it's okay to kill without repercussions. And he says the show mostly, not as much the comic, but I think it's an interesting observation.
Well, that's very interesting, because that hits on actually, which Robert made public with Negan Lives. He printed my email, and I was amazed I wrote such an erudite email, I gotta admit, to him about killing off Negan, because as anyone that's read Negan Lives knows, now that we were originally going to kill Negan in that last issue where he featured in The Walking Dead. And I was happy with that. It wasn't like I was really angry or disenchanted with that or anything like that, but I said kind of flippantly to Robert, would it be interesting, in today's current climate, where Hollywood or other media portray the villain as completely unreformable. There is no redemption for the villain. Therefore, he or she has to die at the end. And I say it's almost like something like rollerball or whatever, where death in sport is substituting for death penalty or whatever in real life. But then you think, well, is it contributing to something like that? Is it contributing to the fact that we are more comfortable with killing anyone that's, shall we say, sinned, rather than trying to reform them or understand what the problem is, why they're that way? Is it societal? Is it, I don't know, is it to do with their personality? Is it, historical? I don't know. But so, from that conversation, Robert changed his whole script to making Negan live, because by this time we'd already kind of reformed him. I'll say Robert did a remarkable act here of creating the world's most hateful person, and by the end of it, changing him into somebody you could actually understand and almost a hero. And all the bad stuff he did for a reason, and which makes him a lot more complex than, say, the governor.
Absolutely.
This incredibly complex character, and you did think, God, if he was, if it wasn't the zombie apocalypse, there'd be psychologists trying to understand this guy and work out, why he was this way and trying to, make him, better. So, so it's kind of interesting that emails we've asked, that question's been asked, because that was my big thing of trying to understand the villain and convert him almost to the other side and not kill him, and hopefully we've trying to make people understand that they don't have to die. This is not some sort of black and white universe we're in where it's right and wrong and that's it, there's no in between. And we all know, I think the right-wing way of thinking is that black and white, whereas I suppose the more liberal left wing, which I purport to be, is more grey area, which is probably why we're all perceived as the woolly liberals, because we're all a bit, I don't know, sort of thing. Well, there's this, but there's this, we're always questioning one or the other. But anyway, I digress.
But it's all relative, and then you're right, and then honestly, I feel the same way as a liberal person. Nuanced discussion is no longer in favor right now, and that's really disappointing, because people are complex and they aren't easy. And literally last night with Bill Sienkiewicz and earlier in the week with Gail Simone having the conversation about canceling culture, really. It always makes me uncomfortable, because I understand the reasons why people are upset with these old projects or people that had views that come from different generations and stuff. And I don't disagree that sometimes these are very horrible people, but I also think that they created great art in spite of themselves. So what do you do with the art? Yeah,
exactly. It's squaring yourself with the art versus the person, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, and it is such a minefield. It really is. You almost have to take every individual and say. I mean, I listen to a podcast quite regularly called Evil Genius, which is basically proposes the person you think historically is
horrible, like
Gandhi, for instance. Gandhi was featured, a guy that everyone thinks is this amazing, good, but he also did bad things. I can't remember.
I'm gonna have to check that out. Evil Genius.
Exactly what he did. Yeah, check it out. They're only they're quick episodes, only 30+ minutes. But
okay.
And it's kind of interesting. It's basically squaring up with what they did bad and what they did good, and how do you did they change the world enough in the way of good to quantify the bad to make the bad sort of almost I can't get my words out, but it's
I get it, Charlie. No, I totally I mean, God, again, here in America they're saying we should tear down statues of Washington and Jefferson for owning slaves, and it's like, yeah,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly. At the time, it wasn't deemed to be evil. You know, it was. There will be a time where the death penalty will be. Oh, I'd like to think, anyway, will be looked upon as
Abolished.
this brutal,
Yes.
sort of savage thing. And why the hell do people have it? You know, but at the minute, people are quite happy to have it, and it's perfectly legal in certain parts of the world, parts of your states, whatever. So yeah, it is. It's just this perception sort of thing, isn't it? And how you.
It's bigger than us, Charlie. I
Yeah,
hear you, man.
yeah, oh, it totally is. I mean, it's. I've got to admit, you see, being British, I always find it quite weird when I go to the States. I hope I'm not going to slag off your whole country now, but
It's all good, man.
we
All right.
don't have the flag culture in the UK that you guys do. You know, most suburban streets you drive down in the States, there's quite a few houses of the old American flag flying. If we see a Union Jack flying in the UK, we kind of give it a bit of a look, you don't see it, apart from on obviously official buildings and things like that, where Buckingham Palace or whatever, where it's designed to fly.
Of course.
Flying outside of domestic houses. I mean, the thing is, the England flag, which is different to the Union Jack, which is just a white flag with a red cross. It's the St. George's flag.
With you. Yeah.
Pretty much that is, if someone's flying that flag, you think that guy is into white power.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I had no idea.
It's probably worse perceived than the Confederate flag in your country. Do you know what I mean?
Interesting. I do. And then no, I agree with you. The flag itself in some circles has become more important than the things it represents. And that's when you really have to step back. I have had this same conversation with family members and others, so I do understand. Here, I'm going to go to a couple lighter topics, but I love that we went there. Charlie, I love that we went there. I really appreciate your point of view on all this. I swear. Ken asks, can you talk about your experience on the Green Arrow, Green Lantern crossover you did 15 years ago?
15 years ago. Bloody hell.
Do you remember that?
Oh, God, yeah, no, I remember. Yeah. Well, it was Ben Rabb and... Oh, God. Oh, what's his name?
Was it Winnick? Was it Judd? Judd Winnick?
Judd Winnick. That's right. Yeah, I was going to say the guy that was on that reality TV show before
The Real World. He's a friend. Yeah, he's a great guy. I love Judd.
That's right,
great writer. Great comic writer.
Yeah, it was fun. Oh, God. It was great. I mean, it is one of those things that it came in. I was grateful for it because it was a 6-issue series, at the time, work wasn't exactly... I've never been out of work, but there have been times where, it's been a bit, hand to mouth, shall we say.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the periods where I was a bit hand to mouth. So I was grateful for, potential 6 months plus. Whereas the work, that tied me over for a while. And, it was for DC and it was, proper mainstream stuff. So you always hope that it's going to get you more noticed than it might have done. Obviously it didn't, because well, thank God it didn't, because if it had got me more noticed, I might have turned Robert down on The Walking Dead, because I might have been working on, I don't know, Superman or something like that. And
the road less taken. I understand. That's amazing. All right, here's a
fate's always interesting.
Here's a good music question. Is there any chance you're going to do an Oblivion song cover? Because that would be dope.
An Oblivion song cover? What, to Robert's comic, I presume?
I get. Well, I wondered too.
No, there is the music, isn't there? Yeah. But no one. I wouldn't know what that would be. I presume that would be quite an ambient music.
Well, knowing that you're a drummer, I was wondering when you said you were in a band. I didn't realize you drummed, I'm a former drummer. Not a good one. That's why I'm a former drummer. But I wondered if would you ever want to make music based on some of your comics and stuff like that?
Probably not.
Okay.
Just because I like to keep them separate.
Sure.
It's kind of interesting because the majority of the band are not comics people now.
Okay.
For our potential third album, they're all talking in terms of design, very comicsy, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can. Just in the look and how we're going to design. They're already talking because we've been quite prolific. As I've been saying in the lockdown, we're already talking about album number 3. And they're talking about a certain way of drawing it, and it's all very comicsy, and it's all very kind of 4-color and all this, which would be quite, actually, to be honest, I'm quite into it because the previous album was very design orientated, very kind of subtle.
Okay.
So it'd be kind of interesting to go the opposite way and almost do panels and real bright, primary colors and things like that. But oh God, sorry, that's...
Oh, no worries, bud.
In through my studio there.
You're killing vampires outside, apparently.
I'll have to go over here. That's better.
No problem, man. I appreciate it. Here, I'll pull back too so you're not out of the screen. There we go.
Board there. I'm suddenly blinded then.
Is this better from a face?
Yeah, so... Yes, I'm back in now.
There we go.
There you go. So I've lost my track now. I've a train of thought now.
Well, you're saying that the new design would be more of a 4-color.
Oh, yeah. So it's kind of funny being in a band, obviously not with comics people, but there I am trying to avoid doing comic stuff because that's what I do in the day job. And you want to keep the music separate, and everyone else is going, let's do some comics. Let's do it as a comic-y thing. So it doesn't help because one of the newer members, actually teaches art at a school up the road from here.
Cool.
So of course he's got art ideas, and I think it's an interesting collaboration because he's the guy thinking of all the comic stuff, but thinking probably it's more original. And I'm thinking I know stuff that's like that's been done already, So it's all up for discussion.
That's fantastic, man. All right, remind us again the name of the band to find Cosmic Rays, right?
Cosmic Rays.
Cosmic Rays, excellent. On Spotify.
Yeah. I think on if you go on Bandcamp, you have to. It's Cosmic Rays Band on dot.
Cosmic Rays Band on Bandcamp.
Because there are a couple of Cosmic Rays, but of course we're the best.
There's a music person that uses Word Balloon, and I'm like, oh. And I've never heard of them and wasn't impressed by the music. And I'm like, all right, whatever. So what are you going to do?
But at least you're two different things. Whereas there is another Cosmic Rays band. Yes.
I hear you, man. Planet Divock 91, currently on Webtoons. Charlie's first chapter. It's written by Sarah Kenny, and there's going to be a lot of artists involved. Elsa Chartier did a lovely cover for it. One of my favorite people in comics, and I'm so thrilled that she's involved as well. But I know Matt Kint is coming to name one creator, and it sounds like a lot of fun.
Current comics laureate Hannah Berry is going to do a chapter, so that's really cool as well. So there's a bunch of really. Oh, Matt Kint, I really love. You can if it goes out to Matt, I can tell him I really love Folklords. I think that is a brilliant comic.
I'm with you, man. No. I love talking to Matt, and he's one of my favorite people in comics. Absolutely. And so it's out on Webtoons, and it's free, everybody, honestly. And at the start of the chat, you'll find a link. So please take advantage of that. And looking forward to Heretic. Is that the new one with?
Yes, with Robbie. I presume it's going to take, because like I say, each page is taking quite a long time to draw. But it'll be. Yeah, I should be done with it by the end of the year. So, fingers crossed, it'll be out hopefully early next year.
Well, when you're ready to talk about it, Charlie, please come back. It's been lovely talking to you.
I'd love to, John. I'd love to. Let's stay in touch. Absolutely.
Great. Absolutely, man. So, hey, look who just jumped in real fast. Another wonderful creator, John Lehman.
Hey, just that. He's shouting at me.
I honestly, man, I love when creators are watching and pop in. It's always a great compliment to me, and it's more about the guest. I do understand it, but I'll take the compliment as well. But truly, man, wonderful, lovely talking to you, and thank you for answering the great questions that the people provided. And I will be sending you an audio link. I know you're going off on vacation, or I'll send it to David if that's easier. Sure. This will be an audio product as well as the video. Everybody, thanks a lot for watching. Later tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern time. Charlie will be well in bed by then. We'll be talking to the creator of Darkwing Duck and one of the animators of Bob's Burgers, my good friend Tad Stones, who's it's a busy day. What can I say? I didn't expect to do 3 podcasts today, but it's coming up. So until then, join us tonight. Thank you, Charlie. Everybody stay safe, stay happy, and stay healthy.